I never expected my 3-year relationship with Amanda to end over dinner plans. As a 32-year-old architect in Boston, I thought we had built something solid despite recent tensions. But that evening when she suddenly snapped, I saw years of red flags finally click into place. She blurted out, "We should break up," expecting me to beg her to stay like always. Instead, I calmly replied, "I agree." Then I started packing her stuff. The look on her face was priceless. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If this resonates with you, already hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength when relationships turn toxic. I moved to Boston 5 years ago after landing my dream job at Parkman and Associates, one of the most prestigious architecture firms in New England. The city had always fascinated me with its blend of historical architecture and modern design, which perfectly aligned with my professional passion. My career was thriving, but my personal life consisted mainly of takeout dinners at my drafting table and occasional calls with family back in Chicago. That all changed when my college roommate invited me to a gallery opening where his girlfriend was showcasing her photography. I went to support him, not expecting to meet anyone. That night, across a crowded room filled with abstract photographs and pretentious art critics, I noticed Amanda. She stood out immediately with her confident posture and genuine laugh that seemed to cut through the artificial politeness around her. When our mutual friend introduced us, Amanda immediately impressed me with her sharp wit and intelligence. As a marketing executive for a growing tech company, she had a way with words that drew me in. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from art to architecture to our shared love of psychological thrillers. By the end of the night, I had her number and a promise for coffee the following weekend. Our first year together was nothing short of blissful. We spent weekends exploring hidden hiking trails outside the city, experimenting with elaborate recipes in my small kitchen, and staying up late discussing everything from philosophy to our childhood dreams. Amanda was adventurous and spontaneous qualities that balanced my more structured approach to life. When she surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band in New York for my birthday, I remember thinking I could fall in love with this woman. Meeting each other's families seemed to cement our relationship further. My parents adored her charm and ambition during their visit from Chicago, and I got along well with her younger sister when we flew to California for Thanksgiving. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. Looking back, the warning signs were there from the beginning, but I was too captivated to notice them clearly. Amanda had a habit of making decisions for us without consulting me first. She would book restaurants or make weekend plans, presenting them as surprises rather than impositions. At the time, I found it endearing that she took such initiative. Her subtle criticism of my friendships began gradually. She particularly seemed to dislike Jake, my childhood friend, who had also moved to Boston. "He seems to rely on you too much," she would say, after he called. "Does he not have other friends?" The comments were always framed as concern rather than control. Our first significant arguments revealed another troubling pattern. Amanda would suddenly snap over small issues, becoming intensely emotional and sometimes saying hurtful things. These outbursts would be followed by profuse apologies and periods of exceptional affection. The cycle was confusing, but somehow strengthened our attachment as the reconciliations felt like victories. After 18 months together, we decided to move in together. I gave up my apartment with its perfect view of the Charles River for a larger place we chose together. I was excited about building a home with Amanda, envisioning late nights on our balcony, discussing our future children's names and retirement plans of traveling the world. Once we shared a space, the subtle shift in our relationship became more pronounced. Amanda took charge of decorating our apartment, which seemed natural, given her excellent taste. However, I began to notice my personal items gradually disappearing. My vintage record collection was relocated to a storage closet because it cluttered the living room aesthetic. The framed architectural sketches that had hung in my previous apartment were deemed too masculine for our shared space. Her mood swings intensified in frequency and severity. I started mentally cataloging subjects to avoid and phrases that might trigger her anger. Our home, which should have felt like a sanctuary, became an emotional minefield where I constantly watched my step. The worst part was how isolated these experiences felt since Amanda was always charming and put together in public. My phone calls with family grew shorter and less frequent. When my mother asked why I had missed our weekly Sunday call 3 times in a row, I made excuses about work deadlines rather than admitting that Amanda had planned brunches at times that conflicted with these calls. My friendship with Jake dwindled to occasional text messages after Amanda suggested that his frequent presence in our lives was preventing us from establishing our own couple identity. I was losing myself piece by piece, and somewhere deep down I knew it. But acknowledging the truth would mean confronting the possibility that the relationship I had invested 3 years in was fundamentally flawed. So I continued to adapt compromise and hope that things would improve once Amanda felt more secure in our love. The week before, our breakup tension in our apartment had reached an all-time high. I had an upcoming business trip to Chicago for an important project presentation, and Amanda was uncharacteristically agitated about it. She questioned why I needed to stay for 4 days when the presentation was only scheduled for one afternoon. She suggested accompanying me despite knowing the trip was packed with client meetings and team working sessions. "Why is it so important that you go alone?" she asked while we were having dinner 3 days before my departure. "Is there someone else you want to see there?" The accusation hung in the air between us. This wasn't the first time she had implied I might be unfaithful despite my never giving her any reason to doubt my loyalty. I carefully explained again that this was a crucial project for my career advancement and that the firm was counting on me to secure this client. Through a mutual friend, I managed to arrange lunch with Jake that week, our first proper conversation in nearly 2 months. We met at a sandwich shop halfway between our offices, and his concern was immediate and obvious. "Man, I barely recognize you," he said after we exchanged greetings. "You look exhausted." Over lunch, Jake voiced what I had been afraid to acknowledge. He pointed out how I had changed since moving in with Amanda, how I had withdrawn from friends and family, how my characteristic enthusiasm seemed dimmed. When he directly called her behavior controlling and manipulative, I initially defended her out of habit. "Relationships require compromise," I said weakly. Jake looked me straight in the eyes. "Compromise shouldn't mean losing yourself, Oliver." His words stayed with me as I returned to work. That evening, while looking for a document Amanda had asked me to sign, I discovered something unsettling. My email account was open on her laptop with several of my personal conversations flagged and marked. Further investigation revealed she had been systematically going through my phone messages while I showered each morning. The violation of privacy felt like a physical blow. I decided to confront her about it when I returned from Chicago after my presentation was safely behind me. I needed time to think clearly about what this relationship had become and what I wanted moving forward. The night that everything finally broke open started ordinarily enough. I had returned from my trip the previous day, and the presentation had gone exceptionally well. The clients had signed with our firm, earning me praise from the partners. I should have been celebrating, but instead I felt a strange numbness. I planned a simple dinner at home, nothing fancy, just pasta carbonara that I knew I could make well. Amanda had texted that she was having a difficult day at work, so I thought a quiet evening might help ease her stress. I set the table with candles, opened a bottle of wine, and waited. When she arrived, I immediately sensed her dark mood. She barely acknowledged the effort I had made with dinner, dropping her bags on the kitchen counter and pouring herself a large glass of wine before even taking off her coat. "Rough day?" I asked, trying to be understanding. "The worst," she replied curtly, draining half her glass in one go. "And this pasta has too much pepper." Such a small criticism, but it felt symbolic of our entire relationship. I had been trying so hard to please someone who seemed determined to find fault. We ate in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before I attempted conversation again. "I was thinking we could plan a weekend away next month," I suggested. "Maybe that coastal town you mentioned wanting to visit. I cannot believe you are talking about vacation plans right now." She snapped, her tone suddenly hostile. "My career is imploding, and you want to discuss weekend getaways." I pointed out that she had not actually told me anything about her workday problems, so I had no way of knowing the severity of her situation. This logical observation only intensified her anger. "If you paid any attention to me at all, you would know what I am dealing with," she shouted, pushing her plate away. But you are always wrapped up in your precious architecture and your boring projects. The argument escalated from there, following the familiar pattern of many previous fights. Small disagreement, disproportionate reaction, shifting blame, bringing up unrelated past issues. But this time, as I watched her gesticulating wildly and listing my supposed failures as a partner, something felt different inside me. A strange clarity was taking hold. "Maybe this is not working anymore," Amanda finally said, her voice rising dramatically. "We should break up." She had said these exact words at least 4 times in the past year. Each previous time, I had immediately backpedaled, apologized, promised to do better, begged her not to leave. The reconciliation that followed would be intense and emotional, reinforcing our dysfunctional bond. It was a script we had followed faithfully. But standing in our kitchen, watching her prepare for my desperate pleas, I suddenly saw the manipulation for what it was. 3 years of emotional control, isolation, and slowly eroding my sense of self crystallized into perfect clarity. "I agree," I said quietly. 2 simple words, but they changed everything. Amanda froze wine glass halfway to her lips, expression shifting from rehearsed anger to genuine shock. "What did you say?" she asked. I said, "I agree. We should break up." My voice was steady, calm. I felt oddly peaceful, like I had been carrying a heavy weight for years, and had finally set it down. Without waiting for her response, I walked to the hall closet and pulled out a suitcase. I brought it to our bedroom and began methodically removing her clothes from the drawers, folding them neatly into the luggage. Amanda followed me, her anger now replaced by disbelief. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice higher than usual. "Packing your things," I replied matter-of-factly. "You said we should break up." "I agree. So I am helping you get your belongings together." "You cannot be serious," she said, laughing nervously. "Oliver, stop this. You know I did not mean it." I continued packing, moving to her cosmetics in the bathroom. "I think you did mean it, Amanda. And more importantly, I meant it when I agreed. This relationship is not healthy for either of us." Her tactics shifted rapidly as she realized I was serious. First came the tears, then the apologies, then the reminders of good times we had shared. When those failed to stop my methodical packing, she grew angry again, accusing me of planning this all along, of never truly loving her. "Is there someone else?" she demanded, blocking the bathroom doorway. "Is that what this is about?" I gently moved past her, carrying her toiletries to add to the suitcase. "There is no one else. This is about us and what our relationship has become. I think deep down you know this is not working either." For hours, this strange dance continued. Amanda cycling through different emotional strategies to regain control while I calmly continued preparing her things to leave. By midnight, most of her essential items were packed, and she seemed to finally understand I would not be swayed. "Where am I supposed to go tonight?" she asked, her voice small and defeated. "You could call Diane," I suggested, referring to her closest friend who lived nearby. "I am sure she would let you stay until you figure out your next steps." The last image I have of that night is Amanda sitting on our couch, tearfully calling Diane while I brought the last of her packed bags to the door. When her friend arrived 30 minutes later, Amanda gave me one final pleading look before walking out. I closed the door behind them, leaned against it, and took the first full deep breath I had managed in months. I woke up the next morning in an apartment that felt simultaneously empty and peaceful. Sunlight streamed through windows that Amanda had always kept heavily curtained. The silence held no tension, no anticipation of a sudden mood shift. My immediate emotions were complex, a strange mixture of profound grief and unexpected relief. I made coffee and walked through the rooms, noticing spaces where her things had been, contemplating how to reclaim this environment as my own. Despite the finality of the previous night, I knew the aftermath was just beginning. My phone confirmed this reality. Overnight, Amanda had sent 17 text messages and left 8 voicemails. The messages followed a predictable pattern, starting with disbelief, moving through tearful apologies, escalating to anger, then circling back to desperate pleas for reconciliation. "You can't throw away 3 years over one bad night," read one text. "I don't understand how you could be so cold and calculating," accused another. Please, Oliver, I'm dying without you. Please call me back, begged a third. I crafted a single respectful response. Amanda, I believe ending our relationship is the right decision for both of us. I need space to process everything. Please respect that I won't be responding to further messages for a while. I wish you well and hope you'll take care of yourself during this difficult transition. Her calls continued throughout the day, which I let go to voicemail. I tried to focus on work scheduling meetings with colleagues to make up for time lost during my Chicago trip. By lunchtime, I had almost convinced myself that the separation would proceed with minimal drama. That illusion shattered at 2:30 that afternoon when my office receptionist called to inform me I had a visitor in the lobby. Amanda stood there holding an enormous bouquet of my favorite sunflowers, wearing the blue dress I had once mentioned. Loving. Her makeup was flawless, but her eyes revealed she had been crying. I just need 5 minutes, she pleaded as I reluctantly met her in the reception area, acutely aware of my curious colleagues watching from a distance. This isn't appropriate, Amanda, I said quietly. I'm at work. You won't answer my calls, she countered. What choice did I have? To avoid further spectacle, I guided her to a small conference room nearby. Once inside, she launched into a carefully rehearsed speech about how she had taken our relationship for granted, how she would change, how we could go to couples therapy. The words were perfect, but the performance felt hollow after years of similar promises. I appreciate you coming, I said when she finally paused for breath. But my decision hasn't changed. I think we need to accept that this relationship has run its course. Her composed facade cracked instantly. You're making a terrible mistake, she said, voice rising. You'll never find anyone who understands you like I do. Security escorted her out 10 minutes later. After she refused to leave voluntarily, her shouts about my emotional unavailability echoing through the office. I spent the rest of the afternoon apologizing to coworkers and my embarrassed supervisor. The workplace incident was just the beginning of Amanda's escalating campaign. That evening, my mother called from Chicago, concern evident in her voice. Amanda called us, she said carefully. She's very upset, honey. She said you ended things suddenly, without any warning or discussion. Is everything all right? I was stunned by this new tactic, the attempt to use my family as leverage. Mom, that's not what happened, I explained, proceeding to give her a condensed version of our relationship problems. My mother's long pause spoke volumes. I wondered if something was wrong, she finally said. You've seemed so distant this past year, not like yourself at all. Similar calls came from several mutual friends over the next few days. Amanda had been busy crafting a narrative that painted me as cold and uncompromising, herself as the blindsided victim. Some friends clearly believed her version. Others seemed uncertain, waiting to hear my side. The most disturbing message came 3 days after our breakup. I don't know how to live without you, her text read. If we can't be together, I don't see the point in anything anymore. The implied threat of self-harm sent me into a panic. Despite Jake's warnings not to engage, I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring, her voice small and broken. I insisted she call her sister or a mental health professional, and stayed on the line until she promised she would. Later that night, her sister texted to confirm she was staying with Amanda. The relief I felt was tempered by the realization that even this might be manipulation. Jake became my anchor during this chaotic period, offering his guest room when being alone in the apartment became too difficult. You need to document everything, he advised after hearing about Amanda's workplace visit and family calls. This behavior isn't normal. Taking his advice, I began keeping detailed records of all interactions. I also scheduled an appointment with a therapist specializing in relationship issues, recognizing I needed professional guidance to navigate the situation and my own conflicted emotions. The escalation I feared came 2 weeks after our breakup. Returning home after work, I inserted my key in the lock only to find the door already unlocked. Fear and confusion washed over me as I cautiously entered my own apartment. Amanda sat on the couch, surrounded by photo albums of our relationship. The scene was meticulously arranged down to the wine she had poured into 2 glasses. "How did you get in here?" I asked, frozen in the doorway. She smiled sadly. "I made a copy of your key months ago just in case of emergencies. I've been waiting for you to come home all day." We need to talk properly. The violation of my space sent cold waves through my body. As I looked around, I noticed subtle changes to the apartment. Some of my possessions had been moved or rearranged. With growing horror, I discovered my architectural model for the Chicago presentation, which had taken months to perfect, had been damaged. The tiny detailed elements crushed, as if someone had pressed their hand into it deliberately. When confronted about the damage, Amanda's demeanor transformed instantly. "That's what you care about," she screamed. "Some stupid model. What about the damage you've done to me to us?" The confrontation that followed was unlike anything we had experienced before. Amanda veered between accusations, threats, and declarations of undying love. When none succeeded in changing my position, she made her most disturbing statement yet. "I wonder what your firm would think if they knew about your problem," she said, suddenly calm. "All those anti-anxiety medications you take, the panic attacks you had last year. Do you think they'd still trust you with their precious clients if they knew how unstable you really are?" Her willingness to weaponize my temporary struggle with anxiety, which I had shared with her in complete confidence during a vulnerable period, was the final confirmation I needed. This relationship wasn't just unhealthy, it was dangerous. "You need to leave." "Now," I said firmly. "If you don't, I'll call the police." "Go ahead," she challenged. "I'll tell them this is my apartment too." "It will be your word against mine." I did call the police, who arrived 20 minutes later. The situation was complicated by Amanda's claims that she lived there, but my name alone on the lease ultimately resolved the matter. They escorted her out with a warning, but the look she gave me as she left contained a clear promise that this wasn't over. The next day, I filed for a temporary restraining order and changed all my locks. On Jake's insistence, I also installed a simple security camera system. These precautions seemed extreme, even paranoid, until several friends finally revealed what they had observed, but never mentioned during my relationship with Amanda. "She would talk about you differently when you weren't around," my colleague Sarah admitted over coffee. "She'd make these little comments about controlling your career choices or how she was training you to be a better partner. We thought she was joking, but it always felt off." Another friend confessed seeing Amanda flirting intensely with other men at a party when I had left early for work. "I didn't know how to tell you," he explained apologetically, and she always had reasonable explanations for everything. These revelations, while painful, validated my decision and helped me understand how isolated I had truly become. The support network I thought had diminished was actually still there, waiting for me to reconnect. The ultimate escalation came 1 month after our breakup. After a late night at the office, I returned home to find my apartment in shambles. Furniture overturned, walls damaged, and most disturbingly, my remaining architectural models and portfolios destroyed. On the living room wall, written in what appeared to be red wine, "You'll regret this." The security camera footage clearly showed Amanda using her copied key to enter, then methodically destroying everything she knew was important to me. When the police arrived, I provided the footage along with my documentation of her previous behaviors. They took the vandalism case seriously, especially in conjunction with the restraining order violation. Amanda was arrested the following day at her workplace. The public nature of the arrest and subsequent charges created exactly the kind of exposure she had tried to threaten me with, but directed back at herself. Her company placed her on leave pending investigation, and several of our mutual friends reached out to offer support to me instead of her. The sense of validation was bittersweet. I had never wanted things to reach this breaking point, but the event marked a definitive end to what had become a toxic chapter in my life. Sitting in the courtroom during Amanda's hearing 2 months later was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. The woman who entered with her attorney looked smaller somehow, her confident posture replaced with a defensive hunch. When our eyes briefly met, I saw no rage or defiance, just a profound sadness that momentarily reconnected me with the person I had once loved. The judge granted a permanent restraining order and sentenced Amanda to probation, mandatory counseling, and restitution for the property damage. As they led her out, I experienced an unexpected wave of compassion mixed with my relief. Watching someone I had shared years with face the consequences of their actions brought no joy, only a complicated grief for what might have been if things had been different. Outside the courthouse, Amanda's sister approached me cautiously. "I wanted you to know she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder," she said quietly. "It doesn't excuse what she did to you, but she's finally getting the help she needs. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. The information didn't change the past, but it offered a framework for understanding it. It also reinforced my growing conviction that walking away had been the right choice for both of us, not just for me." The process of rebuilding my life began gradually. First came the practical matters, replacing damaged possessions and repairing my apartment. I decided to paint the walls colors I had always liked, but Amanda had vetoed hang art that spoke to me and arrange furniture for my comfort rather than aesthetic perfection. Each small change reclaimed the space as truly mine. Reconnecting with friends required vulnerability and honesty. Over dinners and weekend hikes, I opened up about how I had allowed myself to become isolated. Jake, always direct, helped me recognize patterns I had missed. "You're a fixer, Oliver," he pointed out during one of our conversations. "You see someone in pain and immediately want to make it better. Amanda instinctively exploited that quality in you." My therapist, Dr. Kaplan, helped me identify how my desire to see the best in others had blinded me to manipulation. Our weekly sessions became a cornerstone of my healing process. We worked through the guilt I felt about the relationship's end, the shame of having stayed so long, and most importantly, how to recognize warning signs in the future. "Healthy love adds to your life, Doctor." Kaplan reminded me often. "It doesn't diminish you or isolate you from others." Professionally, I threw myself into new projects, grateful that my firm had been understanding about the personal turmoil that had briefly affected my work. My creativity, which had been steadily dampened during my relationship with Amanda, seemed to flow more freely now. 6 months after the breakup, I was assigned to lead a major sustainable housing development, a vote of confidence that helped restore my professional self-esteem. The most challenging aspect of recovery was learning to trust my own perceptions again. Amanda's gaslighting had left me doubting my memory and judgment. Dr. Kaplan suggested journaling as a way to anchor myself in reality and track my emotional progress. The practice became surprisingly therapeutic, helping me process complicated feelings that might otherwise have remained tangled. On a crisp fall morning, 6 months after our breakup, I was sketching design ideas at my favorite coffee shop when I heard a familiar voice ordering at the counter. Amanda stood just a few feet away, apparently unaware of my presence. My first instinct was panic, but it quickly subsided into a calm curiosity. She looked different. Her previously perfect appearance had been replaced with a more natural style. Her designer clothes exchanged for simple jeans and a sweater. When she turned and saw me, her eyes widened in surprise, but she made no move to approach until I gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "Is it okay if I say hello?" she asked, keeping a respectful distance. When I gestured to the empty chair across from me, she sat down cautiously. "You look well," I offered, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. "I am doing better," she said, her usual polish replaced with a raw honesty I had rarely seen. "I wanted to apologize to you properly, but my therapist advised against making contact because of our history. Since we've run into each other, though, I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything." She explained her diagnosis and the intensive therapy she had been undergoing. For the first time, she took full responsibility for her actions without qualifications or deflections. She spoke about recognizing her patterns of control and manipulation and her ongoing work to develop healthier relationship skills. "I don't expect forgiveness," she concluded. "What I did was unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that your decision to end things ultimately led me to get the help I needed. In a way, you saved both of us by being strong enough to walk away." We spoke for nearly an hour, the conversation strangely healing for both of us. I maintained firm boundaries, making it clear that while I wished her well in her recovery, our romantic relationship was permanently over. She accepted this with grace that would have been unimaginable months earlier. As we prepared to leave, Amanda asked one final question. "Were there signs from the beginning that I missed? Things that should have told me I needed help?" The question gave me pause. "I think there were signs we both missed," I answered carefully. I ignored red flags because I was invested in the relationship and you possibly weren't ready to see patterns in yourself. But that awareness is something we both have now. We parted with a sense of closure I hadn't realized I still needed. I watched her walk away, feeling not the aching love or bitter anger that had alternately consumed me for months, but a simple, compassionate detachment. The year following our breakup transformed me in ways I never anticipated. I developed stronger friendships, became more assertive in expressing my needs, and learned to recognize early warning signs in relationships. I even started dating again, approaching new connections with both optimism and healthy caution. My apartment evolved into a true reflection of myself, filled with books, architecture models, and art that spoke to my passions. Weekend mornings, once dominated by navigating Amanda's moods, became peaceful times for coffee and sketching. I reconnected with my family through regular visits and honest conversations about the relationship patterns I had learned to identify. The most profound lesson came from understanding that walking away from someone you care about can sometimes be the most loving choice for both people. My decision had freed me to rediscover myself and ultimately gave Amanda the push she needed to address her underlying issues. Setting boundaries is not selfish or cruel, but necessary for genuine love and respect to exist. True partnership should enhance your identity, not erase it. And sometimes the greatest strength lies not in enduring difficult relationships, but in having the courage to start over. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you cared about? What helped you find the strength to stand firm? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more conversations about healthy relationships. Remember that your sense of self is worth protecting, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply say, I agree this isn't working. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it brings clarity and courage to anyone facing similar challenges.